Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure being here, and I want to thank the organizers for the warm hospitality they've offered me since arriving and before I arrived. It's terrific being here, and I compliment you on the topic for this meeting. Innovation defines us as a civilization. Without innovation, all else just pales. Innovation in healthcare is especially important, because without innovation, we will stop improving patient outcomes and health system efficiencies. So we should not take this lightly. Between all of us, we are the custodians of innovation. And even more scary than that, we're the custodians of making sure that innovation gets to patients. So my credentials I covered I feel a bit like Forrest Gump, I guess. I've covered everything from basic cancer research to clinical trials, medical oncology, chair of an academic department, CEO of a cancer center and institute. But my life really began when I was seconded into the Ministry of Health in Ontario. And it was a one-year secondment because they recur. And I failed the next 10 years off parole and stayed in there for 10 years. And my role there was to develop an evidence unit. The evidence unit was to inform policy decision makers at a senior level on the adoption of new health technologies into our health system. And I did so with trepidation, but I did it on one condition only. And the condition was that there would be total transparency over everything that I and my unit did. We'd put everything onto a website in a draft form so people could criticize us. We developed a window on the world, which was called Ontario Health Technology Advisory Committee, and we published all their findings and all their recommendations on a website in draft format as well, and developed a formal process for complaint. Probably the best thing I ever did, because I learned so much in terms of policy decision making and the translation from evidence to policy. So I'm going to take you on a three-leg journey. If during this presentation I make it sound easy, or if during this presentation I make it sound as if we're the best thing in the world, I will be guilty of misrepresenting the facts. A lot of very good stuff going on internationally. I'll pay very quick attention to it. But I by no means want to stand up here and be guilty of self-aggrandizement because we're all in this together. The third part of this journey is where we are now, and it's probably the most exciting thing that I've ever had the privilege of dealing with. So I've been asked to speak about the squeaky wheel. Well, when you're dealing with evidence is either the cause or the antidote to the squeaky wheel. And people who criticize you for anything should not be denigrated for criticism. Squeaky wheel is really a fairly derogatory term. And I'll just, this is a top of mind, an unsubstantiated attack in the face of a rational, evidence-based decision that's frothing at the mouth. And very often it's irrational. Where it is rational, that is completely bona fide criticism, and we should be accepting of that and be proud that we have the democratic process to take that on. These are the drivers of the squeaky wheel. If you have an evidence-based decision process or a decision process which is not clearly articulated, and which is not trusted by anyone who has anything to do with that process, or if you have undesirable, unexpected decisions that come out of your system, you are going to be inviting the squeaky wheel. In the context of health technology, this is especially important, because as I'll allude to later on, most startups, most innovators are really led to believe, because the regulators like the FDA have done such a TGA and Health Canada and CE have really done a really good job of telling people exactly what they want. And people think that once they have their technology approved by a regulator, all their problems are over. And they'll take shortcuts to get there. But the problem is that the research they do or the evaluation they do to get to the regulator is totally different from what the payer really wants. And lost in all of this is the payer. Lost in all of this in the trajectory from innovation to adoption is, what does the payer think? Because that's where you're going to meet the payer one way or another. And very often, in fact, 54 to 95% of the time, the payer is going to reject, in North America, is going to reject regulatory approved health technologies. So we might as well get in on that act pretty quickly. So I'm going to take you on the first part of the journey, which everyone knows about. In 1975, Congress said, we want more evidence on which we make decisions in terms of health technology. And then this grew pretty quickly, and you can see the countries where this is really very strongly entrenched. This is called post-market evidence development. Post-market meaning post-regulatory approval. And there's some terrific examples there of organizations that have done an amazing job in securing that and giving it the credibility that it deserves. I'm going to concentrate on my own territory now, not because it's the best, it's far from the best, but because it's my comfort level. So when I was asked to set up this evidence-based unit, it grew from 1 to 50 PhD, mainly PhD clinical epidemiologists and health economists over a 3-year period. I insisted that we have a multi-stakeholder group that would look at the evidence, contextualize it, and then make recommendations based on the evidence. So this is a transparent process over between 2002 and 2011. I'll tell you why in a minute why it stops in 2011. We evaluated 150 non-drug technologies. Rejection rate was 54%. Conversion to policy occurred in 90% of cases, and the positive recommendations led to rapid increases in the adoption of technologies, including endovascular ablations, bariatric surgery, etc. The negative recommendations were accepted, and a lot of these changes were implemented through changes in the fee schedule. There were 2 appeals, and the only one major protest that we encountered out of the 150 was regarding PET scanning. I can't talk about it now, but if you want to, I'll talk about that later on. So here's some examples very quickly about some of the decision points. Artificial disc replacement, the blue line is lumbar disc replacement, the red line is cervical disc replacement. OTAC made a recommendation that cervical discs were not ready for use. They were not terribly safe, not terribly effective, whereas lumbar discs were really quite good. And you can see the diffusion and the diffusion rates over the next 5 years. This is bone mineral density testing. We looked at the evidence for doing bone mineral density testing on an annual basis. We modeled it, and we came to the conclusion that you can do it every 5 years instead of every year in average risk patients for osteoporosis. In the blue line, the red line are those with high risk, and our recommendation was just let the physicians and the patients decide what they want to do about bone mineral density testing. And you can see what happened subsequent to the OTAC recommendation and a change in the fee schedule. The rates dropped off precipitously for the average risk. And my vitamin D testing, for some reason, and I'm not even going to go there, but for some reason there was an exponential increase in demand for vitamin D testing. Began in 2006. Over the next 2 years, the vitamin D tests in the province went up from 100,000 to 800,000. We were asked to do an evidence-based analysis. We could not find any evidence that vitamin D testing for most people had any utility at all. The ministry immediately invoked a change in the schedule, and you can see what happened straight after that. And I think that's been maintained ever since then. So evidence is fine. And what began to happen, to my amazement, and it was brought to my attention by the minister's office, that they weren't getting any complaints, that everything that we were taking them, there was some trepidation in applying policy to these recommendations, and they were anticipating the world was going to fall down around them. And that didn't happen at all in any of these situations. We were concerned that we were turning down technologies that could be very, very important to patients because there was not sufficient evidence there to justify a recommendation being made. So we instituted what has since been called coverage with evidence development, where we paid to collect evidence on these technologies in real time. And some of these were actually randomized controlled trials. Some of these were observational. So 14 of these were completed. We published our results, translated to policy in 100% of the time. There were no appeals. The publications, I think, put up there because these were not fly-by-night studies. It took about 2 to 4 years to complete. And then, the question arose. You'd look at that and you'd say, hey, wow, this is terrific stuff. But there's something very, very overpoweringly negative about this. Because why don't you get it right the first time? Why go through this whole rigmarole and bring it back and fund it and get coverage of evidence development? And you couple this with a high rejection rate of regulatory approved technologies, and the quote that came to mind was something as rotten in the state of Denmark from Hamlet. And what are we going to do about it? Because this is not a good scenario, and yet this is what the world is doing. Second journey, upstream engagement. And we call this EXCITE, which means excellence in clinical innovation and technology evaluation. So what is wrong with the status quo? First of all, there was a risk to innovators, investors, to patients who weren't accessing appropriate technology in a timely fashion. Expectations of payers, policymakers, health systems, and patients were not being met because they weren't involved in the process, in the formative process. And for those of you who don't know it, for non-drug technologies, you can tweak the patent on the technology very quickly. And in fact, the market exclusivity on a non-drug technology is about 18 months before someone else leapfrogs you into the market. So time for them is money. Time for them is everything. And if you kind of dilly-dally around a bit and you push people back repeatedly, that's going to stifle innovation. So payers are being vilified. Bob said it earlier on, there's a place in heaven for policymakers, although it feels like hell on earth when they are alive. So they're being vilified for unjustified reasons. They were just not happy with the evidence that was being presented to them that could make them change their funding stream from another technology. And the solution was being followed right now, actually, pre-market advice, help companies, help innovators get their product by speaking to regulators and speaking to payers ahead of time. The FDA is becoming very strong in this area. NICE has done it with scientific advice for a number of years. Or you can do a single pre-market study to satisfy stakeholders for selected, impactful technologies. And this is where EXCITE, sorry to make you seasick, this is where EXCITE comes in. A comprehensive collaboration to draw innovations likely to improve patient outcomes and or health systems efficiencies. Can this be done? Is this just a pipe dream that you can bring people together in the pre-market space and do it together and pull in the good technologies? So this is the model that exists at the moment, pre-market. The dotted line going up is the regulatory approval. This pre-market's where you do studies to satisfy the regulator, then you go post-market. A number of things happen in the post-market space, which are set up there. And then you either get your technology diffused. Sorry about that, I've got to go back. You either get your technology diffused, or it's rejected. Sorry, that's red line, this shouldn't be there. So what happens if you bring all that stuff on the right side to the left side? I have a delinquent red arrow there, which just ignore. So here you're going to have the regulators and the payers and the expert end users and patients and everyone working together to bring good technologies into the health system, and something magic happens here. You truncate the whole process, you make it more efficient. So the status quo is this industry has or the innovators have a product evaluated, you get the results are sent back to industry, industry sends it to the regulator might say, afraid not, negative, red arrow, or they might say, yeah, please carry on, goes to the payer or the health system, who then invokes a full-blown evidence-based analysis, a systematic review economic analysis. If it's positive, it gets adopted. If it's negative, it doesn't get adopted, and it goes back. And now you've got a vicious cycle that's building. Now, in that process, evidence is policing adoption. Not a very good scenario. The Excite process is very similar, but here you have the input from payers and from others impacted by the technology in blue, the blue arrows leading to protocol development, and we think that you can mitigate the risk of rejection, the dotted red arrows in that. And here evidence is driving innovation. So the assumptions we made with the Excite program was that this pre-market selection and collaboration would mitigate rejection, de-risk investment for obvious reasons, because investors like the fact that this has been endorsed by people who might be adopting the technology later on, accelerates global adoption because you're working in multiple countries, drives innovation, reduces the need for repeat trials, and decreases costs because it's a more efficient process. So here's the proof of concept. In 2012, I left what I was doing. I went to this place called Mars in Toronto, which is, I think it's 1.5 million square feet of innovation, accelerator, incubator space, and they took me on. And we started this Excite pilot. We took the infrastructure that had been developed in the Postmarket space, dragged it upstream, had 5 methodology centers, 24 teaching hospitals to work with. Now you can see 16 out of 55 applicant technologies were selected. So the other technologies were junk DNA, do not assess. So these were technologies that should never have developed in the first place. We took the 16, 3 have been completed, 8 are ongoing, and a few have fallen away. And the lessons we learned were that this was a feasible approach. You could bring people around the table, you could discuss things together, you get the job done. It's an uncomfortable space to be in initially because of entrenched belief systems and behaviors that we had to untangle. And this became a pull model as opposed to a push model for technology coming into the health system. And here's the first case study. And of this, I'm actually very proud that this was the first study. We did an analysis on sleep labs in Ontario, and Ontario has the highest rate of sleep lab tests per 100,000 population in the world. My solution to this was to give everyone a Starbucks card. That didn't go down very well. So we challenged a research institute to come up with an alternative to a sleep lab test. And it took them a few years. By this stage, we'd moved across and started the Excite program. And they came up with a disposable mask that a patient wears at home. It's got a microchip at the base. It records all the guttural sounds that people make when they're disgusting, that they make when they're sleeping. And it converts that into a sleep apneic episode or not. You take the microchip out in the morning, you upload it to take you to GP, and the diagnosis, 96 correlation coefficient, 96 is 0.96 compared to sleep lab test. This was so successful that it changed the ministry's policy on Excite. In October 2016, that's not so long ago, our Deputy Minister of Health made a public statement through a public letter to the chair of the board of Excite, Mars Excite, and basically it said that any technology coming down the Excite pathway that they're involved with will have an expedited adoption into the health system. So the final journey is the third journey of Excite International. We were challenged by the FDA, would you believe, to try and internationalize what we had done. So we have now built models for Excite in a number of jurisdictions internationally. And you can see that the US, Canada, UK, Norway, Netherlands. We invited Australia to participate a year ago, and we haven't heard back. This is a common protocol, which I've described already, an international parallel approach. And we can also extol the virtues of a lot of excellence in the system. I'm not going to go into early technology review, which happens to be our most popular offering right now. So we incorporated Excite International in March 2016. We've developed these infrastructures. Here's an example of the US. You can see going across the top, innovation to evaluation, regulation, adoption, surveillance. Down the left column are the different kind of key elements in the US that would allow us to cover that full trajectory. We call that a US platform, and we have similar platforms for the countries that we're working with. I'm almost done. Norman, I'm sorry, just give me 1 minute. So this is what the coalition of the willing looks like internationally right now. In the US, we have all these partners on the left top panel, and you can read them yourselves. In the UK, we've been working with these partners on the top right. In Canada, we're already established. And in Europe, we're working with the Netherlands and with Norway and Nordic countries, and we hope to use those as platforms into Europe. This is all built in a year, and we are now ready to roll. We already have started 2 evaluations using this. I think key to what I'm going to do now, just show you the advisory council. We have a scientific collaboration with some of the best methodologists that I know anywhere in the world on the scientific collaboration. And this is key. This is our Payers Advisory Committee, and I want you to look at who's on this. This is a board subcommittee to Excite International. It has Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, who together account for a total health spend of $1.9 trillion a year. Kaiser Permanente, Aetna, Anthem, all in the US. You have Ministry of Health in Ontario. You have NICE and NHS on this committee. We have the Netherlands Ministry of Health, Norway Ministry of Health, and I've got Australia there again, just fishing. So we're not pushing this. I mean, people are interested, they come to us. That Payers Advisory Committee is key to everything we're doing. And my last slide is this one. The status quo is stifling innovation. We better step out of the way or change what we're doing. The second point is that if we're serious about driving innovation, start the pathway to adoption early in the life cycle. Transparency and collaboration are essential to the process. Evidence should be used to drive and not police innovation. And finally, we have a comprehensive approach to the pulling of effective technologies pre-selected into health systems. And because we do these in parallel in different countries, we think that we can give an opportunity for global adoption in one fell swoop using Excite International. Thank you very much.